In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can make basic edits to these Photoshop templates for Facebook. Now, essentially, you're going to want to download the zip file where you've bought it, and it'll have all those files in there and some fonts that you can install if you're missing any of the fonts from these files. They're mostly Google fonts, so they are free, but otherwise, you can feel free to use these for yourself or for clients at no extra cost. They're covered for commercial use. Okay, so I've got a handful of templates open. I'm zoomed in a little bit, and you can see I've got just a few of them here from the basics pack, just to give you a bit of an idea on how this all operates. Now, first thing you're going to notice, there's some guidelines on these packs here. This is actually where your picture can get cropped on Facebook. At the moment, the full view is basically what you get on a phone, but anywhere between these two guidelines is kind of where the photo will end up being cropped to on desktops. You'll actually lose this top and bottom piece. And I've designed the templates in such a way so that you don't have to worry about figuring out where the crop point is. You just keep everything between those two guidelines that you don't want cropped, and it should all be good. Now, what we're going to do is go through and just show you some of the basics. I'm going to show you how to change a few basic colors here. Now, obviously, first of all, if I want to change this background color here on the wave, I've actually got, you can see on the right here under the layers panel. If you can't see the layers panel, just go to window at the top and down to layers to turn that on. And what we're going to do is, you see I've got some folders here. I've got text area, side panel, and this says paste image here. So you're going to notice a lot of this on all of the templates I have. I've tried to put paste image here in any area where we want you to basically to place an image to get the same sort of positioning that we have here. And then we have folders you can expand upon in this text area here, so you can go through and find what you're looking for more easily. In order to change the background of this wave area here, I've got a color background. Now, I've done a few, depending on what I think is going to be easiest to use, I've set this up in a few ways on different templates. Because this is just one big solid color, if I want to change this color, I simply go over here to my little color picker, hit blue maybe, something like a blue. I'll go a bit lighter. I choose my paint bucket tool, which if you can't see it, it'll be under this, either the gradient tool or the 3D material drop tool. Any kind of paint bucket or gradient, you just simply click and hold, choose the paint bucket tool. I make sure I have this color background layer clicked, and I just pop the color in there. So I just click on that color to paste it into the background. So that's a pretty straightforward way to change the color on some of the flatter elements of the template. You'll see it says color background or something similar, and you won't see any effects or anything. Whereas some of these have effects, that you can see here, effects, drop shadow. So there's a drop shadow on this object. So there are other ways I've done it too, which if I go into this text area here, where I've got these little icons for the address, I've actually set them up in a different way because I can't simply paint bucket those ones. So I close this folder here, I go into text area. I come down to contact details, which is another folder, and click the arrow. I have phone icon, and then the phone, email icon, and email. If I want to change that phone icon to a different color, you'll see here it has effects and color overlay. So it's a slightly different setup. So if I double click on color overlay, I get layer blending options, and I get this here. This is where I can change the color of the phone icon. So if I click on this color, if I want to change it to yellow, I pick yellow on the color picker, the address icon I should say. I click OK and OK. I can go ahead and do that for each one individually, or what I tend to do is I right click on the effects area, click copy layer style, and on the email icon I hold control on that, and the web icon I scroll down with my mouse wheel. So I hold control to select the three layers I want to make yellow. I right click, paste layer style, and now I have yellow icons here. So that's another way of changing color. Now you notice that because any layer which has a color overlay, you'll have effects and color overlay there. So that's basically how you can spot that. It may appear slightly different to you, but you can also look for a little effects symbol on the right, and that tells you that there's some effects applied to that layer. So changing the color overlay on those symbols will make it easier for you to change the color of those symbols pretty much. And some other things, I've got like some paint strokes on some, which you can simply do the same thing, click effects, and color overlay, and it'll change the color of that paint stroke and things like that. So once you look and you can see this stuff, you'll see how easy it is to edit these layers. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Now, one thing you might also notice is on some areas there'll be a gradient overlay. So I don't have anything necessarily open for that, but you'll see here instead of color overlay, it'll have gradient overlay. So I'll show you what I mean by going down to, I'm going to collapse this folder, go to the side panel. If I go to blending options, I'll put gradient overlay there. So you see here it says gradient overlay. So some layers may have that also. Once again, double click on that gradient overlay. You can pick a gradient from down here. So maybe I go into blues and pick something like this. And there's a slight gradient on there, but the opacity is just down a little bit. Try and get something a little more outstanding like this. You can change the angle a bit, the scale, so you get something a little more sort of outstanding that way. So anytime you see a color or a gradient overlay, once you go in here, you can turn these on or off. You can turn this off and go to a color overlay, or go back to a gradient overlay. So you've got options to switch between the two if you want to change those. So that's how you can change the basic color of objects on some of these templates, whether with a color overlay, gradient overlay, or with the color dropping bucket. So now the final one, if you want to change the color of text on here, once again I collapse this. Under text area here I have edit title, edit subtitle. This is to show that they are editable layers. I put the word edit on there. I'm pretty sure I've done this on all the layers in this pack and in all the packs, but sometimes you sort of slip up. But you can either click on edit subtitle like this, and I can just double click on the T and I can edit that layer, or I can control enter when I'm done, or I can choose my text tool here, which if you hold it down you see any of these. Choose the horizontal text tool and I can just highlight, and up the top here you've got your text panel. I can click on this, I can choose the same yellow as before, click OK, and once I've got that I unhighlight, hit control enter, or just this tick symbol up here, and I've changed the color on my text. Now the same thing goes, once again I can double click on the title, and or I can just click in with the text tool and I start typing. So maybe I'll call this cube book or something like that. You simply click and type, and to get the effect you want. Now you might also be thinking, what happens if I type this and the text is too long? What I recommend doing there is simply going to free transform, so edit and free transform, and then you can grab these handles to make it whatever size you want. You can also move it around, and even if you hold around the outside a little bit, you can rotate, and or control Z to undo that. So you've got a few options there to make it look the way you want. I'm going to just drag it down to this size here, hit enter. So you can see our basically our template is starting to come together, and we've got some basic sort of edits. Now one thing I will do is I'm going to change this here. We do cool stuff, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the font. If I highlight this up the top here where the font is, I can simply click and choose another font. Maybe I choose Gaudi old style. I could choose something like this. So I can change the font to whatever font I want to, and that's a basic Photoshop function that anyone can access. Okay, so we can also edit some of these other areas down here, such as the address. So what I want to do, once again, I've got my text tool. I can simply click in here and highlight and start typing. So 555-555, an email address. So info@yourdomain.com, and I can do things that way pretty easily. One thing I can also do is, if we go to the folders here, so once again, if I just collapse these, you see we've got text area. If I open that up, there's now contact details, and then we've got edit phone. So if I turn that on or off, you can see the phone. So these areas here with the little T on them, that is, if I double click, I can edit that. If I double click phone, I can edit phone, and I can scroll down and edit the address and that sort of thing. So it's pretty straightforward to go in and edit these details. And I've also got, if you see here under this over here, there's also a some of these have social media icons. Same thing again, I can just click and highlight, add Facebook username. Or if I go through all the folders, you see here under these squares, I've got the right square 3, social media, which is this square on the right. I can open that up and there's a social media folder with basically, if I collapse that, expand that, you've got Facebook, Twitter. You can turn, if you don't have a Twitter profile, you can always turn Twitter off and then take this take the YouTube folder and you can hit Control T or edit and free transform and just simply move that up. Or you can grab this whole social media folder, edit, free transform and move the whole thing down. So it's easy to edit and move things around on these templates pretty easily. Now back over to this template for a minute. You're going to notice we've got a few things here. The only thing left on this particular template is this image. Now this is a very simple image. We've got more complicated ones in the template pack. If I click on paste image here, what I can do is if I have an image such as this open from pexels.com, say you've got an image open, you can zoom in, I right click, I copy the image. I can simply, since I have this image, this layer highlighted, go to edit and paste. And then I can just move, so I can either use this move tool here, oops, I've created a text layer accidentally. I can use this move tool here to move it into position. Or once again, I hit Control T for free transform so I can resize it and make it the size that I want. So I'm going to delete that layer because another way, probably a better way to insert images is not so much copy and paste. So I've got paste image here. I'm going to go to File. I can either place an embedded image, which means I place an image and it is just held in the file if I want to open it up and change it later. Or I can place a linked image, which means if I place an image from my computer, I can update that image elsewhere and have it be able to be updated with a click of a button in here. But we're just going to focus on place embedded for now. So click place embedded. I choose an image. So let's say this one. It'll place it in the position. Now, this is just above the paste image here layer, which is what we want, but it's not quite big enough. So before I click the tick or Control Enter, I'm just going to size that up. Now, if I'm here, his shoes might get cut off. So I'm going to make sure I move it up, maybe even zoom in a bit more. And there's our template edited and ready to go. And you can basically go ahead and save from there, which we're going to get to soon. But first of all, we're going to go through just a few more things that we can change on these templates. So the next one we're going to look at, we're going to go into 3 square here. We're going to pop a logo just in here. So the way that works, once again, I've got a whole, this one's a much more complicated template than the other, but you can still see we've got the folders, we've got the paste the background image. Once again, I can go to place embedded, change that image to something like this, pop it in place, and we've got our background image. If I turn this one off, I can then go ahead and even just tone it down to get that purple color, and I can go back to this background color here, maybe paste the blue in there that I have, or maybe even a red. So I place that background color, I use the paint bucket tool to make it red, and then I can just simply adjust this until I'm happy with it. So that's how you can get some basic effects just with that background image. But what I'm going to do, to pop this logo in here, I'm going to go on into squares. And because this is the center square, you'll see here it says square 2, just collapse that, square 2 logo. So I open that one up and it says place logo here. So you will actually have to remove this layer. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my logo in here. So I'm going to actually go to File, Place Embedded. And there's a few things. I'm going to just grab my, say, black square. And I pop my logo in position here. I turn off this place logo here, and you see I've got a logo in place there, which it'll sort of snap into the center if I move it around. So I've got a logo in place there. That's how you can add a logo in that position. Now, it might not work quite that simply, because if you've got a graphic designer, you should be able to get that logo transparent. If you created it yourself and you're not sure how to make it transparent, I've tried to make it so it's not too difficult for you to get the layout the way you want. So if I turn this off, again, I go to Place Embedded. I've got this logo here which has a background color, which if I just place it like this, it doesn't look as good because it has a white background around it, but I can make this as big as I want and it'll be cropped within that square. And that way you can have your logo in there looking the way you want, or you can basically learn to cut it out. If you're not sure how to cut out images, leave a comment on this video or send me an email, something. But you should be able to cut it out fairly easily. If you've got a plain background color, what I can do is I can right click on the text, rasterize the layer. I can just simply get like a magic wand tool and just sort of start chipping away at that background if I want to, and just deleting the color I don't want. There's a bit more to it. Cutting out's an art in itself, but you should be able to just basically pop that in there and it'll be confined to that square, so you can enlarge it as much as you want. Now I'll just go back to this layer for now. Now on the same note, I'm going to go ahead to Arrow Y, which is the one we opened up before. And I'm going to show you, so some of these templates have a few images in here that you can edit. So the way that works, again, I've got my photos layer here, or a layer that has the location. You just got to sort of look around a little bit. I've got the top photo here. If I expand that, it says paste image here. So I'm going to do just that and go File, Embed, and choose this guy here. Now once again, he's going to get cropped at the mouth there, so I'm going to move this down. Maybe expand it a bit so he doesn't get cropped. Now one thing you can do as well is if you want this to take up a bit more space, because it is going to be confined to this shape, I can click on the overall layer, hit Control T, and I can move the entire layer across like that. And the same with this next one. If I collapse that and I go to Center Photo, open that up, click on Paste Image here, I'll go to File, Place Embedded, and maybe I choose something else such as this here. I put it in position, and then maybe I decide if I click on this here, I want to bring it out, or I want to tuck it right in. I can move those around quite easily just by clicking on the actual folder. I was actually holding down Control then, clicking on the folder, holding down Control, you can just move things around. I still prefer Control T because it allows you to rotate if you need to and do a few other things. But these folders are easy enough to move if you're not familiar with that. But any of these images you place will be confined to that area that I've created because of the mask. So you can actually confidently place images in there and just move them about until they fill it up the way that you want it to. So it's pretty straightforward and pretty easy. One thing I will actually show you again is if you're using a grid. So some of these layers have photo grids, especially if you've got the photo gallery pack. You see here we've got full grid, and then we've got every individual shape and then one image in the background. So if I decide, so at the moment this big triangle doesn't have an image in it. So if I go here, go to Paste Image here, Place Embedded again, I can choose the photo of this girl. I can pop her in there, and I can have that there amongst it all. But if I decide that I don't want it, I can simply turn the folder off. If I don't want these logs here, I can find that particular image, which would be, I think this one here, turn it off, and it'll show this background image. So if I actually go ahead and place another image in there, something with a bit of color so you can see the difference, we'll choose this guy again. You can see he takes up more of the area. As I turn things on and off, if I turn this on, he gets replaced. So you can actually insert images into each individual triangle, or you can pop one image in the background and simply turn off certain areas so that it shows bits and pieces of the same image. So that's a feature of some of the photo grids. It allows you to get a bit more creative with them. So you just go to the very bottom underneath all the folders, and there's a paste background image section there. You can pop an image over. And that just helps you to get a more creative feel with the photo grids. But just going back to Arrow Y again for a sec. Now, as I said before, if I choose this top photo, I can move the entire thing around. But if I want to move the image separate to that, what I want to do is actually open that up and click the image individually to move that image. And also just remember, anytime you can turn layers off. If you decide you only want 2 of these images, we can go over here to our layers and turn off the center one and simply just have our 2 images, or turn another one off. Or maybe you don't want the bottom. You can go through and turn off any of the layers that you don't want. It's a good thing about Photoshop. You can turn layers on and off at will by clicking the little eye symbol. It's very straightforward and easy. And that's how you can get pretty much everything. Everything turned off or moved the way you want. So the last thing I'm going to touch on in this quick little basic intro video is that some of these are going to have different layers and effects. I can't cover them all necessarily, but I'll just go through a bit of an approach to see what they are. So if I close down, collapse this photos, go into the text layer. Now this text layer here has an effect on it with a purple and a blue. But if you click on that layer, edit title, you see we have effects and several drop shadows. This is showing you all of the effects available that are being used at the moment on that layer. So if you see an effect and think, I want to change that color or that glow, this is basically how it's done. I double click on effects and we get our panel. I'm going to try and line this up so you can see this while I'm working on it. And you can see anything that's unticked is not being used. Anything that is ticked is being used. So if I click on this drop shadow, you'll see the blend mode is pink. The other blend mode here is also pink, and we've got 2 blend modes. That's because one is just like a solid shadow, the other is like a blurred shadow. If I decided I want to make that green, I could click on this pink color here, pick my green, and make that green. I then move down to the next drop shadow, which was pink also. Click on this, make it green, and now we have this cool green and blue effect. I click OK. Again, I can copy that layer style, and there's a few other things such as the top and bottom borderlines has the same effect. If I drop that down, I can right click, paste the layer style, and on this one here, right click and paste the layer style. So you can go into the effects, or you can even just right click and go to blending options, and you can find any of the effects being used on these layers and you can change them around to suit. Now obviously we're starting to get to a point where it's more about learning how Photoshop works, but this gives you a basic idea on how you can do some of the general changes. One thing you also notice just before I wrap up is there's a little bit of a background overlay here. I can turn that off and make it black. But you can put any image you want in there. So I can once again go to place embedded. Maybe I want this water effect here, so I click on this. And you don't have to use the whole photo. You can, if I zoom out a bit, I can simply take this entire thing and just stretch it right out, have a water effect. I turn off this overlay. There's a whole bunch of options. It doesn't take much to get this looking. I don't really like the look of this thumbnail of this particular template at the moment, but you get the idea how easy it is to change things and get the effects you want. So yeah. Now, once you're ready to go ahead and use this, we've finished editing, we've gone through everything we can edit in Photoshop. How do you actually get it onto your Facebook page? What we're going to do is we're going to take this template, we're going to go to File, and we're going to go to Export and Save for Web Legacy. Now I like JPEG. You can choose PNG if you want. You're going to get much bigger files, but I'm going to choose JPEG for this. 1920 by 1080 is the size I want to save it as. The quality is probably going to be best at around 60. We're going to get a bigger image, but that's okay. You can adjust that if you want to make it smaller. But once I'm happy with that, I'm going to save this image. Arrow Y, edit. And now I'm going to go into Facebook and just on the desktop here and upload the image. Okay, so I'm now on Facebook and just on like a hidden page I've got. This is actually one of the other images from one of my template packs. But all I need to do to change this now is go into click edit on the cover photo here. I'm going to upload a photo. And you can see the image here that we created. I'm going to upload that. I can drag it to reposition it, but I'm happy with where it is, so I'm just going to click Save Changes. And you can see our image is now there in place. Now I'll also take a screenshot on my phone so you can see how it looks, and you can notice how it actually crops a bit more on desktop as opposed to on phone. So that's why we've got those guidelines in place to help you sort of better understand how to set this up so you don't lose too much information. So I hope you found that video useful. If you have more questions, don't forget to check out some of our other videos on editing these templates, or leave a comment below or send me an email. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day, and I'll talk to you again soon. See ya.